Uh, Good morning, everyone, and welcome along to our third series of classes, third series of courses for Bodhi Tree Buddhism Community. This time around, we are taking as our topic mindfulness meditation. So this decision was done after our last course on calm and insight meditation, and then asked around and particularly got some feedback from some of the more regular participants in the class. And thanks everyone for your feedback. I had a few different ideas, and so putting all those together, it seemed that everyone really wanted to have some meditation. So we had to do that, but people were also interested in looking at the texts. So I thought, what better way to do it than to continue a bit similar to last time, where we on one hand are studying texts and looking at texts, but we're also doing some meditation practice as we go. Okay, I see we've got a couple of people are joining us online here already. We've got Margot, good morning. Tim, we can see you though. Okay, I hope everything's all right. I'll explain that little difficulty in just a second. Terry, good morning, and Guanjing, good morning as well. Good to see you all. The issue there was just, again, for this new course, getting some new hardware in particular, a new microphone to help make the audio quality a bit better, and also rather than using a Wi-Fi connection, which was a little bit unstable, we're now on a landline connection. However, my laptop only has so many ports and plugs, and so just coordinating all that maybe create a bit of a difficulty. Okay, but enough of that, let's get into our class. Now, I see we've got a number of people online. If you've just joined us online here, please feel free to write a comment, say hello there in the comment section. It's always good to know who we've got joining in the class this morning. And because we may have a few new people, I will just for today do a very brief introduction. So the class is called Mindfulness Meditation. It's one of a series of classes done by our group that we've got here, and our group here on Facebook is known as the Bodhi Tree Buddhism Community. And my name is Matt Osborne. I'm the main person behind it, though I do have some other friends helping out with a few aspects. And I'm presently based here in Taiwan. I'm not originally Taiwanese, I'm originally from New Zealand, but I've been in Taiwan for quite a while. Presently, I am a visiting associate professor at the Department of Philosophy at National Taiwan University, where I teach Buddhist philosophy. And previous to this, I've been elsewhere. Place before that, I was in Mahidol University in Thailand, again teaching Buddhism, Buddhist studies, and before that at Fowang University, which was again here in Taiwan. So I've been teaching Buddhism and Buddhist studies in universities for quite a few years now, almost 9 years now. And for part of that time, and also before that, I was a monk in a Chinese Buddhist tradition. And so what I'm trying to do here in the class is, when I teach at university, it's like academic Buddhist studies, and but as a Buddhist practitioner myself, I also know that kind of the value of Buddhism isn't just from Buddhist studies. It's something that needs to be practiced, something that needs to be engaged in. And so what I'm doing in addition to my university classes is also having these classes live streamed here online and on Facebook, whereby we can talk about just sort of Buddhist practice. And a couple of courses ago, we were doing these classes in person. I had help from another friend. We did some recordings of them. We put them up on a YouTube channel. But then this year, particularly with the COVID-19 issue, it kind of then gave us a big push to do the classes online. And so that was something that we had in mind for a while, but this really kind of made the decision for us. So we're doing them live, and then also, of course, after the live classes, these videos are then going to always be up there in the Bodhi Tree community page. So if yourself you want to look at them again later, or maybe you have to go halfway through the class because you've got something to do, that's fine. You can always just go do your thing and come back later in the day or in a couple of days or in a week or so and watch the rest of your class, of this class, in your own time. Okay, I see we've got a couple more other people online. We've got Hanuman, we've got Mei Fang. Good morning, and glad to see you joining us here today. Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction about who we are and what we're doing. But let's talk about the content of this course. So as I said, we're looking at mindfulness meditation. We've got a strong support in the Philippines through Terry in particular, with the Kalyana Buddhist group there. And I see that one of the things that most of the people there are quite interested in is mindfulness meditation. And so I thought, okay, this is like a really nice, really core sort of a practice. Let's take this as our topic. And what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at a couple of texts. There are lots of different sutras and lots of different teachings about this, but I don't want it to turn into just kind of a textual reading class, so I've kind of limited the number of texts. I'll show you in a second what we've got. We're looking at an English translation of the Pāli text, so from the Theravada tradition, called the Maha Satipatthana Sutta. So the teaching, the great teaching on the grounds or establishments of mindfulness. And we're also going to be looking at a couple of other related texts that take the content of that sutra, some individual parts of that, and then looking into those in greater detail. And so we've got sources and good English translations from the Pāli Theravada tradition, and we've also got some English translations from Chinese texts. They're kind of, it's a different tradition, but they come from exactly the same source. So it's probably about, I don't know, maybe 2,000 years ago, when different Buddhist traditions and communities are spreading over India. They're all taking the same sutras with them. They're all taking the same teachings with them. And at a certain point, they write it down. They might use their own local language or local dialect. And of course, some of those were also brought to, say, China and translated. So they're the same texts, but just a slightly different version of it. And so we'll be looking at some of those texts, looking at English translations from the Chinese, okay, when we get into certain parts. Now, mindfulness is a really hot topic, shall we say, in contemporary Buddhism. And there's a little bit of history there. I think it's worth talking about that very briefly. Now, the whole idea of mindfulness, it's definitely an important teaching within Buddhism in general. It's a very important teaching within Buddhism in general. And we see it in a lot of the Buddha's teachings, where he's talking about the kinds of practices that one needs to do when engaged on the path. You know, for example, we talk about classic structures like the Eightfold Noble Path, right? We begin from right view, then we go into right intention or right thought, and we go through all of them. And what we find is at the end of the Eightfold Path, number 7 is right mindfulness, followed by right meditation. And often these two are grouped together and described in just a simplified terms as the practice of meditation. And we see also mindfulness, so there we see it in the Eightfold Path. We see it in some other groups of teachings as well, such as the 5 spiritual faculties or the 5 spiritual powers. We see it also in the 7 factors that lead to awakening. In all of these places, we see this idea of mindfulness coming up. So it's a kind of a pretty essential teaching right from the start. But it's also important to note that in the modern period, it's become even more important. Now, I don't want to get into all the history, but the kind of the short story is, in contemporary Theravadan tradition, and particularly in what was then called Burma, what we now call Myanmar, they had a time period where they got all the most learned monks in the land to get together. They recited all the Buddhist teachings, and they kind of did like I want to say like an editing, but it's kind of like they wanted to double check, okay, what are all these teachings that we have, and we want to make a contemporary volume of it, right? So get it down in writing and double check, make sure that we've got every word, every sentence, everything accurate and clear. And in this process, one of the people who was one of the monks who was leading this process really felt that some particular sutras on mindfulness were really the essence of the Buddhist practice. And that teacher, he was a very remarkable teacher called Mahasi Sayadaw. He was a great scholar, but he was also a great meditation practitioner as well. And he had a large community where he led and he taught a lot of meditation practice and a lot of mindfulness practice. And that gave it a really strong emphasis in what was at the time Burma, now Myanmar. Some of those monks and also some lay practitioners, such as Goenka, who was a very important. He was a civil servant. He was a politician, but he was also a very devout Buddhist. And he took these mindfulness teachings and he also started to spread them throughout India, through other places in Southeast Asia, and also abroad. And a number of Westerners that went to Southeast Asia or South Asia at this time to learn Buddhism and often become monks also learned these mindfulness practices. Some of them stayed monks, some of them didn't. Some of them returned back to the West, and in particular in the US, there was a couple of people. They took those contemporary teachings and way of practicing mindfulness back to the US. And then they also engaged in their own psychological studies, and they did really modern scientific studies using these mindfulness techniques. And it was really very revolutionary. And it also meant that these teachings were put in a very modern and contemporary English idiom and expression. Okay. Since then, it spread off into lots of different subcategories, such as mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy, and so on and so forth. And so we see mindfulness used as a core practice in Theravada tradition. We see it used as a very core practice, and then these mindfulness meditation-based secular therapies and techniques. And from my angle as well, it didn't just kind of stop there. This kind of influence has also had an effect throughout various forms of East Asian Buddhism. And I know in Taiwan there's a number of meditators, monks and nuns and monasteries and lay practitioners that have also been heavily influenced by these ideas of mindfulness. And so some of my own teachers, in particular Venerable Hui Dun, but also, say for example, Venerable Hui Ding as well, also used some elements which were basically straight out of this mindfulness tradition. So I would like to share some of those with you throughout these 6 weeks of classes. Okay, see we've got a couple of other people online. Leanne there. Good to see you've joined us. If anyone else is just tuning in, please feel free to write a little comment in the comments section. It's always good to see who we've got online. So as I just mentioned, we're going to do 6 weeks. It's a little bit less than last time, but I think 6 weeks is a good length to have a bit of focus, but without being too long that maybe we lose people's attention after a while. Now, the core teachings on mindfulness in the main Mindfulness Sutra, there are 4 grounds of mindfulness. So it's mindfulness of the body, of sensations or feelings, mindfulness of the mind or mental states, and also a mindfulness of dharmas. Now, I'm going to explain all these in a second, but those basic 4. Now, I think when it comes to our basic practice, in particular, one of the first ones, a mindfulness of the body, which includes mindfulness of the breath or mindfulness of breathing, is super important. And I also think that mindfulness of the body, including mindfulness of breathing, is something that is a really good daily practice, a very good kind of entry-level one. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that. So Today we're going to be focusing on mindfulness of the body. Then the next 2 weeks we're going to be looking at mindfulness of breathing in quite a bit of detail. And it's really like a central practice. And then we're going to go into mindfulness of sensations, mental states, and dharmas for weeks 4, 5, and 6. So it's going to give us 6 weeks in total. So that's our kind of format that we're planning. Okay, I see we've got Eleanor there who's joined us online. Good to see you tuned in. Okay, so that's kind of our basic format. Now, even before we jump on into this, I really should have said this at the start, like why practice mindfulness in the first place? Now, some of these, contemporary techniques, we talk about mindfulness. You always hear, practice meditation, be calm and be relaxed and de-stress. This is all true. All of these things are definite results and possible results that we can get from mindfulness practice. But I'd like to kind of just be a bit more traditional for a moment and say, and actually maybe show you the texts. Let's have a look at the text and let's see what's our kind of a potential ultimate goal. We might want to take it back a couple of steps to talk about a more practical or short-term goals, but let's just have a look and see what we've got here. Okay, now I'm going to just cut scene to a text here. We're going to look here at, what have we got? Well, we're just going to look at the sutra that we've got here for a start. So this document that I'm sharing with you, let me zip up to the top here. Hello. Okay, this text here is, sorry, the computer's being a bit laggy. This is the middle-length discourses of the Buddha. And it's a translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Bhikkhu Bodhi is a very good Okay, so there's the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, the Majjhima Nikaya. This includes from the Pāli tradition some of the essential mindfulness teachings. Let's just skip through this fairly quickly. There's a bit of a contents, got the contents of the whole document. You can see there mindfulness teachings on mindfulness seem to be plaguing us. Okay, so I'll just repeat that again. So the Buddha's intention here is for people that are practicing this, one of two fruits should be expected, either final knowledge or non-return. So final knowledge here is referring to state of liberation. He then goes through and says, let alone 7 years. So you don't even have to practice for 7 years, 6 years, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 year. And then he goes through and even he talks about for 7 months, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 month. And even down here when he's talking about if one should practice it for half a month, one should develop these 4 foundations of mindfulness in such a way, 7 days to attain liberation or a state of non-return, which is very, very close to liberation. Now, part of the reason from these statements in the text, this is one of the reasons why this was given such a good emphasis in the contemporary condition, and why they did retreats that were often 7-day retreats or maybe like 2-week or 1 month retreat, with the idea that one could practice this for that short period of time and attain liberation. Now that's one of the goals. We might not necessarily get that from our short classes today, but the point I want to emphasize is that indeed, these are some core teachings. We may attain some short-term relaxation or some calmness as a kind of a byproduct, but really the goal of this is to attain wisdom and insight that leads to liberation from suffering. That's kind of our bottom line standard Buddhist practice goal here. Okay. Now let's jump back now into the start of the text and see what we've got here. I'm going to skip through here. It seems to work better if I go through the text when I'm not streaming that page. So I'll just go up to the front of the text first. And then, okay. So this is the text here, the start of the text, Satipatthana Sutta, the foundations of mindfulness. Maybe just talk a little bit about this term sati. So in English, it's become very common to use this term mindfulness. It's become kind of a standard Buddhist English term now, mindfulness. And that translates the Pāli word sati or the Sanskrit word smriti. Now originally this term has a sense of memory, to remember something, but it's not like memory in the regular kind of sense of like you might be thinking about something you did yesterday. But it's when it comes to a type of practice, your mind is focused on the object so that you don't forget it. In other words, you don't get distracted and your mind wander off onto something else. So that's this term sati. The other part of the text is patana. Now there's a couple of different explanations for what it means. Here, Bhikkhu Bodhi has translated it as a foundation. So it's kind of like these are the basic 4 ways or 4 types of things that you should keep in mind, so be mindful of for this practice. But it can also be interpreted or understood as being the establishment. So it's not just the foundation itself, but it's establishing it and the very process of setting up, constructing and making that type of mental attention. Okay. So there's 2 different meanings, but they obviously come together in the sense of there are these basic practices, these basic objects that we direct the mind to and do not let the mind get distracted from. Okay. Start of the text, we've got the usual context. Thus I have heard on one time the Blessed One, the Buddha, was living in the Kuru country, and the Kurus had a town called Kamasadhamma. And while he was there, the Buddha was giving a teaching to his disciples. So he says, address the disciples, bhikkhus, and they replied, Venerable Sir, and then the Buddha began his teaching. Bhikkhus, so practitioners, this is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of nibbana, namely the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Now, this very first term here is actually super critical. This is the direct path. Now, there were, so in the early modern period, and if you look at some earlier English translations, this gets translated as this is the only way. So the term is something like ekayana. So it's kind of like one way. And so often people interpreted this as this is the only way. And that's one of the reasons why for some of those Theravada traditions, they believe that this was just absolutely a critical text. You could not do any other, you could ignore any other practice, but just practice mindfulness, because mindfulness is the only way that leads to nirvana. However, more recent studies and more recent translations, such as this one by Bhikkhu Bodhi or work by Venerable Analayo, say no, it doesn't mean one way, it's like a one-way path. So if you take this path, it only goes in one direction, it only goes towards liberation. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't other paths that also go to liberation, but it just means if you take this, it's only going to take you in one direction. So just note that if you're using some other translations. Okay, and as we see, it purifies us, it helps us overcome sorrow, pain, grief, suffering in general, right? It is the way out of our problems. And there are 4 of them. So what are the 4? Here, a bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as a body, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating feelings as feelings, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating mind as mind, etc., mind objects as mind objects. So for the 4, we've got kind of this repetitious passage. So let's just look at the first one, contemplating the body as the body. I know that's a question that was. But what does that mean, contemplating the body as the body? Okay, now we're going to see as we go, the way in which the text teaches is really already explaining what that means to contemplate the body as the body. But I would say one of the critical things is maybe what we usually do is we contemplate the body as my body, or contemplate the body as me. And thus we become very involved with it. However, we're going to do it in a bit more objective fashion. We're just going to contemplate the body as a body. And we do the same with feelings and thoughts and all these other experiences that we have as well. Now, contemplation of the body includes several different parts. Maybe I'll just remove this. The first one is mindfulness of breathing. Now, as I said, we're going to get into this next week, so I'm going to skip over this one. We're going to skip over this one. And we're going to go into something even a bit more fundamental. I think practice-wise, actually, one should really begin with the 4 postures. So, now, when I read this out, instead of saying bhikkhus, I'm going to say practitioners. Okay. Again, practitioners. When walking, a practitioner understands I am walking. When standing, he or she understands I am standing. When sitting, he or she understands I am sitting. And when lying down, he or she understands I am lying down. Or he understands accordingly, however his body is disposed. So in other words, whatever position that you're in. Now it kind of sounds like I think when we first read this, it's like, what does it mean? Like, I'm walking. Of course I know I'm walking, right? I'm standing. Of course I know I'm standing. What do you think I am? Do you think I'm walking and I think I'm flying through the sky? Of course not. But often, if we think about this a little bit more, we realize often when we're walking, we are mentally somewhere else. We might be, I don't know, wherever we're walking to. We might be walking to the store. And while we're walking, we're actually thinking, I want to buy this, I want to buy that, and what should I do tomorrow? What should I cook for dinner? Okay, so the body is walking, but the mind isn't walking. We're kind of mentally somewhere else. So what this is telling us to do is, when we're walking, bring our attention here, right now, to this process of walking. Okay, and similarly for these other ones as well. I am standing. When we're standing, we are aware. Okay, right now I'm standing. What's it like to stand, to be here and stand? Similarly for lying down or sitting, and so on and so forth. And these first 4 postures, they're kind of very standard, particularly I think in the Chinese traditions. There's what they call the Si Wei Yi, so the 4 postures. So standing, sitting, walking, and lying down. But of course, these are not the only postures that we do with the body, right? We also have all sorts of other postures in any way that we might be doing it. And so the last point here, right? He or she understands accordingly, however their body is disposed. And I think that's kind of important too, and for another reason. Often when we talk about meditation, we'll put a big emphasis on like having a good meditation posture. And that is important. It is important to have a good meditation posture. It will affect your state of mind and your ability to kind of concentrate and focus. But one of the important points in that last thing is like, it's the critical thing isn't so much about being in the right posture, but whatever posture you're in, you're mindful of it. Right? So that's kind of an important difference here. It's not so much about being in the right posture, though it can be helpful, but even if you're in the wrong posture, whatever posture you're in, you be mindful and be aware of that. Okay, I've just skipped back to see some of your comments there, and yeah, I know the audio kind of went out there for a while. I am not sure the reasons for that. As I said, we got a new mic in, and it was working fine in testing, and I'm not quite sure what happened. Anyway, we've got it back now. Let's continue here with the text. Oh, no, this one here. Now, So as we're walking, we're aware of walking. As we're standing, we're aware of standing. Sitting, sitting and lying down. In this way, the practitioner abides contemplating the body as a body internally, externally, and both internally and externally. Now this phrase is a very common kind of phrase that we'll see in a lot of different texts. And very literally, it's translated just very literally here, internally and externally. There's a bit of a question, like, what does that mean, internally and externally? There's a couple of different interpretations. One of the interpretations is kind of a very literal, internal and external with respect to the body. So you're kind of contemplating like inside your body and the things going on inside your body. And you're also kind of contemplating your body as you see it from the outside as well. But there's also another interpretation whereby internal and external, okay, remember these aren't originally in English, okay? So the Pāli words or the Sanskrit words can also very legitimately be interpreted to mean internally means one's own body. So you're contemplating your own body. So when you're walking, you're aware, I'm walking, this body right here is walking. But externally means contemplating the bodies of others. So when we see somebody else walking, we know that's just walking. When we see someone else standing, that's just standing, and so forth. So there's two kind of ways of interpreting it, and I think they're both traditionally acceptable. So I'm not going to say one's right and one's not right. You can work on any of these levels. And then last bit of this paragraph, and they abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a practitioner abides, contemplating the body as a body. Okay, so the key thing here is not clinging to anything in the world, right? Now, as we go on in a second, we're going to see another little passage which is very closely related. And I want to really get into this again today as well. The next part, along with the postures, is what's called full awareness, but it is kind of breaking up the physical movements of the body and breaking it down into even smaller parts. So again, practitioners. A practitioner is one who acts in full awareness when going forward and returning. Again, what does that mean? I think you're just kind of like coming and going. And again, in English, coming and going is not so literal, just means in whatever you're doing. Who acts in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away. Who acts in full awareness when flexing and extending their limbs, right? So you might reach out your hand or pull your hand back, stretch your foot out and bring it back. That could even be reaching out to open a door handle, reaching out to take a cup of water, and then putting it back with your hand. Who acts in full awareness when wearing their robes, so for us, putting on your clothes, right? And carrying your outer robe and bowl. We could say when we're carrying things, right? Put on clothes, take off clothes. We might pick up a bag, we might pick up a suitcase, put on our shoes, take off our shoes. We do all of these in full awareness. Who acts in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food, and tasting. Now this is another really big one. So when we're eating, it's often really common, kind of like the body's eating, but the mind is, totally somewhere else. And probably I'm as guilty of this as anyone. Eating while you are scrolling through messages on your phone, or you might eat dinner, watch TV, or listen to music. And kind of, this action of eating, we learned it when we were a little baby. We don't need to give much attention. So the body's doing one thing, but the mind is like totally focusing on something else. So here we're eating and putting all that attention into eating. Every movement, seeing the food, taking the food, chewing the food, feeling the flavors and tastes, swallowing the food, right? And so on. Who acts in full awareness when defecating and urinating, so going to the bathroom. We're not just sitting there and daydreaming about something else, but yep, you got it. what you're doing when you're sitting on the toilet bowl, paying attention to it, being aware of every action, every movement, and so forth. And finally, who acts in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, and waking up. So again, even as we go to sleep, we're paying attention, right? Now's the time to sleep. I'm lying here, relax, let my mind go into a state of sleep. And as we wake up, I'm now waking up, right? Talking. As we're talking, we are aware that we are talking. And that doesn't, of course, just mean the words that we're saying, but literally, feel the movement of your mouth, the movement of your lips, and so on. And also keeping silent. We know when we are not talking. Now, here we've got the list of different items, but I think if we get the spirit of it, what's the real gist that they want to say here? It's not just about these items on the list, right? It's really saying everything that we do, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all these physical movements, we're going to be mindfully aware and pay attention to what we are doing. Okay, now it kind of sounds like super easy, but that's kind of maybe one of the difficulties, is that most of the physical actions that we do during a day, they're so easy, they're so routine, we don't need to pay attention to them. And because we don't need to pay attention, our mind is wandering. But that kind of is a bit of a disconnect. We're not then giving attention and understanding as it really is what's going on. Now, as I kind of describe it like that, okay, I'll just finish off one little bit in the text and then I'll come back to a kind of a related point here. So it then continues on in the same way for full awareness, right? Contemplating the body as a body, internally, externally, and so forth. Now, there's a little refrain that comes with all of these parts. I'm going to have to scroll up to show it to you because it's repeated earlier in the text. This here, what's called insight. And so all of these practices, you'll see this little bit that keeps on getting repeated throughout the text. It'll kind of, describes, this one that I'm showing you now comes for the mindfulness of breathing. So as you're doing the breathing practice, and then how do you use that practice to generate insight? And so this little insight, this kind of like paragraph here is repeated constantly throughout the text with reference to all the different practices that are being done. So let's just have a look at it. In this way, the practitioner abides contemplating the body as a body, or he abides contemplating the body as a body externally, or contemplating the body as a body both. So internally, externally, or both internally and externally. Okay, so that's in a way the mindful practice. The mind is constantly aware of the body and its actions and its movements without being distracted, wandering off and daydreaming. But what's the insight we can generate from it? That's the next bit. Okay, or else they abide contemplating in the body its nature of arising, or they abide contemplating in the body its nature of vanishing, or they abide contemplating in the body its nature of both arising and vanishing. So we've got two terms here, right? Arising and vanishing. What does this mean? Well, in short, arising and vanishing, the first one is how things come into existence, and the second one is how things cease to exist. Chinese sung mir, right? And this is intimately related to the Buddhist idea of impermanence, right? All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. So if we're contemplating the body, let's just think for a moment of the body in general, this physical body over the course of a lifetime. Okay, before conception, this body did not exist as this body, right? Matt's body did not exist before conception. Conception, through this process, growth, grew up into fetus, a baby, an infant, little boy, youth, teenager, young man, and now this old guy. And it's, it's a whole process of how this body has come into existence. So impermanence and change dependent on many different conditions, right? And also then the vanishing. So from this point forward, the body goes process of old age, bits constantly falling apart, right? Things not working properly, we get sick, old age, and finally this physical body will die. And ultimately, whether it's cremated or whether it's buried or whatever, this body at some point is also going to cease to exist as this body. So we're going to reflect then. We can reflect on the body as a whole, but we can also reflect, if we just go back to the text again, right? That's the body as a whole, but we can do the same thing for each of these actions as well. Even the action of stretching out your hand to take your cup of water has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? As you drink. Beginning, middle, and end. The process of getting the cup is impermanent, constant change. Drinking, impermanent, constant change. As we stand here, right? First I wasn't standing. Now I'm standing for some reason. After a while, for some other reason, I go do something else. Now I'm no longer standing. So all these actions of the body are constantly impermanent, constantly in the state of change for various reasons and causes and conditions. One of the big ones, of course, is just our intentions, right? We want to do something, go somewhere. The mind in general directs the body, but not always. Sometimes we do kind of a little bit involuntarily. And then finally here, or else, so from this part here, or else mindfulness that, quote, there is a body, is simply established in the practitioner to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and mindfulness. So this is just a really raw experience. For example, experience of the body. This is a body. This is the experience of a body. We're not going to add on these factors of, such as, this is my body. My body is an attractive body. My body is an ugly body. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. My hair's too curly. My hair's too straight, etc., etc. All of these things are kind of not the body itself. These are all our, very subjective, highly kind of self-centered and ego-centered opinions that we have about it. We're going to leave all those. We're just going to experience the body as a body. We're going to experience walking as walking and leave off all that, what it gets kind of called judgmental attitude that we have towards these things. Drop the judgments. Just experience it as it is, just raw. By not adding those judgments, by not adding those opinions to it, we have bare knowledge and mindfulness. So bare here means just kind of raw. Just seeing it for what it is rather than what we think it should be or what we want it to be or so on and so forth. Now, again, it sounds really simple, right? But it's actually not so simple, but it is still very powerful to just experience it as it is, right? The practitioner abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a practitioner abides contemplating the body as a body. Okay, so that's some of the just really simple basics there. Looking at the text, there are lots of other elements of mindfulness of the body as well, but we'll just leave that apart. We're not doing a textual study. We need to actually do some practice, and time is always, of course, limited. So we're going to change. We're going to do some stretches, and then we're going to do some meditation. Okay. Now, I used to have the other camera up for the stretches, but today I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to use the camera that we got now, and I have to just kind of do a very basic action of like, I'm going to have to raise this up, and we're just going to do some really, just use this camera here and do some stretches, and then we can also get into the meditation proper. Okay. Now I think I just need to move the angle of that. My apologies. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Okay, it's not ideal. Okay. Unfortunately, you can't kind of see my whole body here, but I think that's okay. As I said, we're having difficulties with the other camera because of the ports on the computer, so I'm going to have to find a solution for that for next week. Okay, so of course it makes me look very tall with this low angle, huh? So let's just start going through the core parts of the body to just loosen up a bit. We've already been sitting for a while. We're going to start with the ankles, so just with the ball of the foot on the ground and rolling at the ankles and loosening up. Now remember, when we're stretching in the ankles, the feet, put your mental attention into your foot. Okay, put the attention into that part of your body. And for your other foot, now I know you can't see it on the screen at the moment. Okay, roll it back the other way, putting your focus and attention into your foot and the movements of your foot. Okay, we're now going to move up to the hips. So hands on your hips, and we're just going to do circles at the hips. And again, nice and slow. And feel that movement. Okay. One thing I notice, like we often maybe go to like a yoga class or some kind of like fitness place or gym. I think we often spend too much time looking at other people. I mean, you might need to look at your instructor, for example, and see what's the instructor doing, how do I do it? But it's very easy to be very self-conscious, constantly comparing ourselves to others. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to be aware of our own movements in our own body and leave off this issue of like, oh, am I doing it right? Do I look nice? Do I look ugly? I'm just going to leave that back the other way. So feel those movements, right? Now, of course, the sutras almost never talk about stretches or anything like this. I think I can remember one sutra that talks about massage after long meditation. But I think it's a very good practice to do because it's easier to be mindful of the body when you're moving. Okay. Next part, we're just going to move to the upper part of the body and the chest. So hands in front of the chest. Stretching up, inhaling, opening up the chest, exhaling down, feeling the stretch in your back and the backs of your legs, inhaling up, opening up the chest and feeling the movement in your chest, exhaling down, again. And down. Okay, back up. Okay, just going to do the neck side to side, so stretching to the left. Again, feel the movement, feel the stretch, other side. Other side. Other side. Center, and then up and down, last set, and down, and up, and down, up, and down. Okay, back to the center. Okay, let's just shake off. Shake your arms and legs and relax the body. Okay, now normally we would now take a seat and begin our sitting meditation, but I'm actually going to start today by doing standing meditation. So I'd like you to stand comfortably. Just be aware of the position of your feet. Maybe have them a little bit apart. Maybe your toes a little bit wider so you're nice and stable and strong. Your hands just totally relaxed by your sides. Stand up straight. So your head and neck up straight. And just relax your body, in particular around your shoulders. Okay. Now we're just going to start with this really basic practice of being mindful of standing, right? So when the practitioner is standing, they know, I am standing. So just feel yourself standing here. Now you might feel that you're being distracted if there's any visual objects around you. So if it helps, you can either close your eyes or maybe just lower your gaze down so you're not looking around and being distracted. And just feel standing, feel the weight of your body. You can feel the weight of your body on your feet. Feel exactly what part of your feet the weight is on. Are you standing on your heels or on your toes, or are you balanced? You can feel the weight of your arms by your sides. Your hands may or may not be touching part of your body, maybe your sides or maybe your thighs. You might feel the weight of your clothing on your body. You might feel perhaps the temperature, maybe it's warm or cool. There may or may not be a breeze. All of these things are just taking place in the present moment. So you just feel yourself standing here. Now a common technique that can be used is called a body scan. This is a slightly more contemporary take, but I think it's entirely fitting with the teachings in the sutra, and you can do this standing or sitting or any posture. To go through each part of your body in turn. So you may, for example, begin for convenience from the soles of your feet and put your attention first into the soles of your feet. You might feel each toe in turn. You might start from your big toes, second toe, third toe. Go through the ball of your foot, the arch, the heel, ankle, through your Achilles tendon, through your calves, through the shins, up through your knees, up to the front of your thighs, sides of your thighs, the backs of your thighs and your hamstrings. Go up into your buttocks, around to your hips, and so forth. Now, I've just read the body parts out quite quickly there. You can do it much slower and with a lot of detail in each little part going through, right? So you can start from the bottom, work up. You can start from, say, the crown of your head, work down through head and face, neck, shoulders, arms, chest, back, from upper back down to lower back, and in reverse order. Any of these is fine. There's no like set way or only way of doing it. Okay, so that would be a basic way to do standing meditation. Okay, we're now going to move and we're going to do some sitting meditation. I'm going to move the camera down now. So, my apologies. I'm going to turn that camera and bring it down a bit here. I'm just going to move the cushion back a bit. Oh, I forgot the chime. I forgot the bell bowl to signal the meditation time. Okay. So take your seat. I'm not going to go through the posture in detail, but just sit comfortably, your legs crossed, again in a comfortable way. Okay, I want to just ease yourself into your posture, make sure you're sitting comfortably. Now again, as the text says, the posture is, as I said, like last class, good posture is helpful to keep the mind alert and sharp, but it's not the most critical thing. Okay, I'm just going to grab the bowl there. Okay. Thank you. And even if you're sitting uncomfortably or in a bad posture, you can still practice mindfulness of the body. Okay. You can still practice mindfulness of the body, so don't worry too much about that. Okay. So, just sitting upright, body's upright, calm. Now, again, we're going to practice mindfulness of the body as we sit. Now this time we're going to go in the reverse order. We're going to start from the crown of the head. If you like, you can close your eyes if you're feeling you're being distracted, and sometimes, I think a lot of people are very visual based, so if our eyes are open, then most of our attention is on what we're seeing. If you close your eyes, it's kind of suddenly becomes easier to feel things. So you can try that. I'll have my eyes open just because I'm talking. Got to keep an eye on the time, for example. So you can close your eyes if you like, and then bring your attention into the crown of your head. And see what you can feel, the crown of your head. And if you pay attention, you'll find the head and neck, head and face, for example, lots of little muscles, and they're actually often like tense or activated, and we don't realize it because we've got all these facial expressions through the day. Relax them all. Go right in. Crown of the head, is it relaxed? Let it be relaxed. Move down through to your forehead, right? Feel the forehead. Is that relaxed? Particularly between your eyebrows. Let it relax. Then around your temples. Be relaxed around your temples. And around your eyes. The eyes have lots of little micro muscles there, so let those all be relaxed. And you might even want to start from like around the eyebrow, and then the outside, and the inside, and the cheeks. It's hard for me to do when I'm talking because I'm actively using those muscles, but for you, really go in and feel all those little physical experiences around your face, down through to your mouth and lips. Again, a lot of tension will build up around the mouth and lips. Let it all relax, but be aware of it. Back into your jaw. You can feel the muscles of the jaw. Again, much tension and stress can accumulate there. So let your jaw muscles relax. And around through the ear, the 2 ears. Let your ears relax. To the back of the head, down to the neck, relaxing through your neck, down into the upper part of your shoulders. You're just being aware of each of these body parts in turn. Just being aware of shoulders. Down through your shoulders, into your upper arms. And your arms should be quite relaxed in your meditation posture. See if there's any tension. Be aware of the exact position of your arms as you are sitting. Down through your elbows into your forearms. Into your wrists. And then down into your hands. Now your hands, like your face, are highly sensitive. So some of the most sensitive parts of the body include, for example, the lips, fingertips. So in your hands you can go through individually through your fingers if you like, and go through the palm of the hand. Just feel your hands. What's it like to have hands or be hands? You can go through into your thumbs. Relaxed. You may find little sensations like pulsing blood through the veins. You might feel warmth. So whatever it is you're experiencing, no judgment. We're not going to say, is this good, is this bad? We're just experiencing it for what it is. Be aware of the hands as hands. Be aware of the fingers as fingers. So from your thumbs to your index fingers. Your middle fingers. Ring fingers, and then your little fingers. Being aware of each of them in turn, in whatever position they may be. No judgment, just being aware of them, relaxing them. You bring your whole attention back to a whole hand and whole arms. Bring your attention back up to your shoulders and then to the upper chest. Feel the muscles, your pectoral muscles in your chest. Of course, you may feel some movement with your breathing. It's just natural. But we're not trying to change the breath or make the breath faster or slower or deeper. Just being aware of the chest as the chest. Down below the chest, through the diaphragm, into the abdomen. Again, you may feel movement there for your breathing. You may not. Again, whether you do or you don't, it's okay. We're not judging it or saying this is the right way or the wrong way. We're just feeling the abdomen. You may have some sensations or feelings down there. Something might be going on. Maybe you've just had breakfast. You can feel gurgling of your food being digested. Maybe you are hungry and your stomach is telling you you're hungry. Then that's just hunger. Just experience hunger as hunger, or fullness as fullness. Move your sensations and awareness down into your hips and pelvis. That includes your buttocks sitting on your seat. The weight of your body on your buttocks. It might be comfortable, it might be neutral, might be really uncomfortable. Just be aware of that, whatever it is. You might realize you are not balanced, maybe you're a bit leaning to one side. Okay, and just be aware of the posture, position of the body, in whatever way it may be. You can move down into the thighs. You may feel your thighs contacting the floor or on your seat. You may feel some tension, or it may be relaxed. Be aware of the position of your thighs. And down through into your knees. And particularly if you're sitting cross-legged, there may be tension around your knees. Particularly if you also have tighter pants on. Again, just be aware of that, whichever way your knees may be, just experiencing your legs and knees as legs and knees. And down into your lower leg, same principle. Being aware of its posture, however it may be. Any sensations or feelings, however it may be. Without judgment, without criticism, or without any conceptual elaboration. Finally down into your feet. Your ankles, heels, the ball of your foot, and down into your toes. Now this is just going through the body part by part, experiencing each part as it is, in whatever position it may be in, with whatever sensations or feelings it may have. Bare awareness, bare knowledge and mindfulness. And finally, we're just going to sit for a minute, just sitting. Just be aware of the body sitting. Of the body as a body, giving up any clinging or attachment, full knowledge and mindful awareness. Take a nice deep breath in. Exhale all the way out. You can open your eyes. I'm just going to rock the body left and right. Now again, we've kind of finished our session, but we're going to keep up that awareness. So even as we're moving our body, stretching, we're being aware of each movement, each sensation. It's very mindful and present. Of course, by practicing in that way, this mindfulness of the body is excellent to bring our awareness into the present moment because the body is here. It's right here and right now and in this space around us. So that mindfulness stops a lot of that thinking where we get caught up in all those mental issues that we have, chasing after the future, chasing after the past, imagining all sorts of things that we want or hate or source of jealousy and pride. But when we're just aware of the body, there's no room for that, right? It's just, here I am right now, embodied, experiencing this life as an embodied being. Okay, I'm just going to move forward on the cushion a little bit for the last session. Okay, that's just a little start there for this first class. So mindfulness of the body is our first session, first one of 6. As I said earlier, we're going to continue the next 2 weeks with mindfulness of the breath. We're going to spend 2 weeks on mindfulness of the breath. And then after that, we will get into mindfulness of sensations, mental states, and dharmas. Now, the time's about 10:20 on my side, so we've got about 10 minutes left. So, see, we've still got quite a few people online there. If you've got any questions or comments, anything you'd like to know, then this is our good time for a bit of discussion. And now, while you're thinking, if you want to ask something, if you want to type in your questions there, maybe just a couple of other little points about some of the elements, the other elements in this text. So in the sutra, so Mahasatipatthana Sutta, foundations of mindfulness, as I said earlier, there are four foundations of mindfulness: body, sensations or feelings, mind or mental states, and also the last one, dharmas. So, okay, well, we'll leave that for now because there's already a question coming through from Hanuman. Okay, so Hanuman's question is, some translations are like contemplating body in the body. Is there something to this? So what do you mean by is there something to this? Do you just kind of mean like what's the importance of the word in? Whereas what we've seen today with Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation is contemplating the body as a body. First of all, if my memory serves me correctly, part of the reason to translate as in is just simply due to the grammar of the Pāli or the Sanskrit, is it uses what is grammatically and technically called a locative. It's a locative and a locative. So like in these languages, you don't use the word in or at or to or from or by. All those parts are part of the word itself. So like the body is kaya, and if you want to say in the body, then you say kaye. If you want to say by the body, it's kayena, right? So part of it's just the grammar. The text is contemplating the body, kaye. So it's literally in the body. But you can't take the literal, grammatical sense. Still needs to be interpreted. So what does that mean? Now, I'll say one thing. Bhikkhu Bodhi, who did that translation, of course, he knows the grammar. The man is an absolute translation master, and he knows Pāli amazingly well. Now, I think there might be a little footnote there. No, he hasn't put a footnote in that way there, but there's a reason why he's got contemplating the body as a body. Part of the question is just simply being, what does it mean to say contemplating the body in the body? What does that mean? Because the body is the body. The body can't be inside itself in a kind of literal sense. The locative can also mean kind of with respect to something. So we could say like, with respect to is like contemplating something as something. So it can also have that kind of sense as well. So I don't think we can read too much into the word in, put it that way. That might be just a little bit too like overly literal from the locative sense of the Pāli. We need to kind of understand what it means, but I think it makes much more sense to say contemplating the body as a body, because you think, well, of course the body is a body, but the thing is we don't do that. When I look in the mirror, I don't just contemplate my body as a body. Well, I just thought, there's my body. I've also got all these other things as well, right? So, for example, men and women always have a lot of projections of ideal bodies. I think this is better known for women. So like the beauty industry, the fashion industry always we're bombarded constantly by images of sort of perfect female bodies. And so when we see our own body and we contemplate or like observe our own body, we don't just see our own body. We are constantly comparing it to this like image of what we think a body should be. Then we're not contemplating the body as a body, right? And it's the same for men as well. In my generation, New Zealand, we grew up watching Jean-Claude Van Damme and Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and we kind of think that if we don't look like Arnie, then we're kind of, our bodies are not good enough. So we're just seeing it like, just see it as it is. Just see this body as this body, right? So a little response here. Okay, thanks. As makes more practical sense than in implies a body sheath. Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? The sense of like a body in a body. Like, do we have like multiple layers? Some other forms of Indian philosophy did literally have this idea that we have different kind of layers to ourselves, or sheaths, as you say. So we start with the Anamayakaya, which is like literally the food-made body, but it's like the physical body. And then inside that we have this other layer, the prana. So it's like a layer made of energy, and then a layer made of mind, and then we get to kind of like this layer made of the soul. And so the kind of these different layers are within each other. But Buddhism, it's not Buddhist point of view at all. No. So that kind of interpretation won't work. Okay, but thank you very much for your question. And I like your question too, because it's also, I mean, obviously you've read some other translations, but we can sometimes see just how important a little difference in a translation can be to how do we understand this stuff, right? If we're just relying on the English, you know, that's all we've got to base it on. How, you know, there might be something else. You know, we might be reading in things from the English translation that are not there. And you also got to remember, we'll also miss things in an English translation that are not there as well, just simply because you can't translate like 100% of the meaning across. Okay, now a comment from Tim there. That was really good, just what I needed. Okay, good to hear that, Tim. I'm not sure where you are. Have you headed back home recently or not? Okay, you can message me later if you like. I know you're busy, a busy master's student though, so just see your own time. And nicely complements the last class as well. Yeah, it's pretty similar, I guess, in many ways. Textual study, meditation, and looking at some kind of foundational forms of meditation practice. Okay, thanks for the feedback. Anyone else? If you've got any questions, please throw them in. I was going to make some comments about something else. What was I going to say? Okay, the comment was this, that in the text itself, so mindfulness of the body, we have looked at like the postures and then these other actions. So walking, standing, sitting, lying down, eating food, putting on clothes, taking off clothes, reaching for things, carrying things, placing things. All of these, we're going to be mindful and aware and just observe them for what they are. But the text does have more. It also includes these really detailed breakdowns. You are looking at the body in terms of all its like constituent physical parts. So that includes like looking at contemplating the hair, contemplating the skin, contemplating your teeth, your nails, like your fingernails and toenails, contemplating your blood, saliva, bones, all of those internal organs, from your lungs, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, your small intestine, your large intestine. Now, these are another way of kind of doing a breakdown, though I think you do need a bit of a foundation before you can get into that. Otherwise, I think what happens if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm going to contemplate my liver. Like, can we actually feel our liver? Probably we can't most of the time. We might like imagine, I think it's here. But as that meditation really deepens, you can have some really deep experiences of the body, things that we don't normally think are possible. If I can give this one little example, I remember on a 7-day retreat once, we were doing a lot of mindfulness of the body. We're also doing a lot of yoga as well, which is a good way of, you know, it's mindfulness of the body in movement. And I could sit in sessions, I could feel like my whole skeletal structure. I could really feel the body like in that kind of detail internally. And it wasn't kind of imagining it, you just kind of feel it because I've got so much concentrated attention throughout the entire body. And you could do the same also for other parts of the body and internal organs and so on and so forth as well. There's also some other ones that involve contemplation of dead bodies and how a body after it dies goes through this decaying process. This is a practice even nowadays seldom used by monastics. It was never taught to lay people. And even for monastics, it was taught very cautiously because it's, you know, incredibly intense practice. It's not something you want to do lightly. And also along with these as well is analysis of the body in terms of what they call the 4 elements. So, 地水火风, so earth element, so solid, water element, liquid, heat, and gaseous element. So different parts of the body, so bones, teeth, skin, hair are the earth element, the physical element. Then we have the liquids such as blood, saliva, snot, urine, and so forth, tears, earwax, the liquid parts. We have a gaseous part, including the air that we breathe. Might include flatulence in that as well. For example, gas coming up from the digestive tract, and also the heat element, which is just basically kind of the heat that keeps the body going. Okay, we've got a comment there from Kunjing. Wow, I'm not sure what the wow was with respect to. Maybe contemplating the body in these ways. Okay, yeah, it's pretty intense. But for now, I just really wanted to focus on these basics because they're really down to earth and practical. When you've finished this class today, and maybe if it's late and you're going to bed, think of that. When you lie down and you're going to go to sleep, be totally aware of your whole posture of your physical body as you're going into sleep, and when you wake up in the morning. If you've got other things to do today, maybe you need to go out of the house, you're going somewhere, be aware of your physical posture as you're walking to the bus station, as you are going on the MRT or metro or subway, as you are climbing stairs, as you are closing and opening the door, as you're eating. All of these, we can be mindfully aware of all those physical actions, moment by moment. Okay. Sure, there'll be other times you can't do it. When you're crossing the road, look both ways. When you're getting something from the shop, remember to pay and don't just mindfully walk out the door. Okay. But after we've done those other things that we need to do, there's a lot of time to practice this sort of thing, and it, as I said, it's really grounding, it's really stabilizing, it really brings us into the present, and that is a real critical part of taming the mind and being able to be aware of the sources of afflictions and also being able to eliminate them. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. Sorry for the technical issues again. Seems every time I get some new hardware, I have to spend a little bit of time to make it actually work. So my apologies again. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully next week we will be back and better than ever. So I hope to see you then. In the meantime, all the best.